The major national dialogue, which held in 2019 in Cameroon, ended with a special status for the northwest and southwest regions of the country. Since then, the government of Cameroon has been multiplying strategies in a bid to ensure the implementation of the special status in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. Already, the regional councils and assemblies have begun operations, and just recently the presidents of the councils delivered their one-year report. Now, continuous violence has, however, been the norm in the northwest and southwest regions, despite several initiatives to bring a solution to the Anglophone crisis. Cameroonians who say federalism and not the special status is the solution to the Anglophone crisis have put themselves together into a coalition known as the Coalition for Cameroon Federalist Groups and Activists. In this edition of the program, the head of that group will tell us how feasible his initiative is and whether it can solve the ongoing crisis in Cameroon's northwest and southwest regions, ongoing for 5 years now. Our guest on this edition of the program is one-time co-chair of the All Anglophone Conference 1 and 2 back in the 90s. He was also the head for the Commission on Reconstruction and Development during the Major National Dialogue. The Major National Dialogue itself, which we mentioned, gave birth to the special status for the Northwest and Southwest regions. He has over 35 years in political, judicial, academic, as well as management experience. He has served in the United Nations in several capacities and rose to the rank of a Deputy UN Secretary General in many countries in Africa and beyond. Our guest is Dr. Simon Munzu. Dr. Munzu, good evening and thanks very much for talking to Dash News.
Thank you, Mr. NSOESIE. Thank you for having me. Good evening to your viewers.
Yeah, the pleasure is shared, sir. You are the chairperson of the Coalition for Cameroon Federalist Groups and Activists. Can you tell us what this body is all about?
Well, first of all, I'm chairperson of the working group of the coalition. Yeah. The coalition, since it just started, doesn't have its, if you like, its management yet, but a number of us are serving on its working group, and I happen to be the chair of that working group for the time being. So, well, you asked me what the Coalition of Cameroon Federalist Groups and Activists is about.
Yes, sir.
I would say that it is about re-establishing the federal system of government in Cameroon. Why the federal system of government? First, because the Anglophones in this country, even those not in favor of separation or secession, are against the continuation of the policy of domination, marginalization, and assimilation in the territory of the territory and people of the Northwest and Southwest regions. We all know that this policy has been relentlessly pursued for over 60 years by the regimes in Yaoundé. We all know also that in recent times, its impact in these two regions has gotten worse. You know, the governing elite in Yaoundé, including the Anglophones amongst them, may pretend otherwise. But we, the people, you and I, Peter, know that these regions, the Northwest and Southwest regions, are governed as if they were a colony of the former La République du Cameroun. that is not an exaggeration. You just need to look at the facts. The evidence is clear. So they want to continue this domination, this marginalization and assimilation through the decentralized unitary state. Now, under this form of a state, even though they pretend that, as you just reminded us, they granted special status to the Northwest and Southwest regions, everything in these regions is still run according to instructions from Yaoundé. We know that, including even the presidents of those regions cannot even order their own cars. Cars have to be bought in Yaoundé, and they have to travel to Yaoundé to collect the keys and the cars. So in order for domination, marginalization, and assimilation to stop, the unitary state in any form must disappear. Okay? Now, on the other hand, Peter, we know that the Cameroon of today came into being when the former British Southern Cameroons and the former French Cameroon came together on the 1st of October 1961 to form the Federal Republic of Cameroon. This followed the choice which our own people in British Southern Cameroons made voluntarily and knowingly. A majority of them decided that the Southern Cameroons should achieve independence by joining French Cameroon. That was in the plebiscite of 11 February 1961, as you remember. Or at least as you may have been taught at school. Now, since then, no one can deny that our two territories formed one country following that plebiscite from that 1st of October 1961. But it's important to stress that in coming together, the two territories placed themselves under two obligations. What were these obligations? The first obligation was to remain one country. That was the essence, the spirit of reunification. We should become one country. So the first obligation was to remain one country. Okay? Now, but the second obligation was that this one country should be a federation. Okay? I would say that the first obligation of being one country has been respected since 1961. Because up to this day, we are still one country in spite of the action that a few people amongst Anglophones have undertaken this past 5 years or so. We remain to this day one country. So I would say that the obligation to form one country has been respected. But tell me, has the other obligation been respected? That of forming a federation at reunification. Has that other obligation been respected? No.
Well, but doctor,
Yes.
doctor, the state will tell you that Cameroonians voted in a referendum in a bid to do away with federalism and strengthen national unity through the unity state of 1972.
No, Mr. NSOESIE, if we go down that path, and I don't suppose that your program of, I think, 1 hour or less would allow us to go that path. What you're saying there is, of course, what the assimilationists promoting the policy of assimilation would say, because they must find some justification for what has happened to our territory and our people. But you know full well that if we go into the details and find out the background of that so-called referendum, how it was conducted, and some people will even tell you that there was not much choice. the fact that by the time it was conducted, we had already got into a one-party state, a party run by the same person who was president. I mean, there is a whole lot of background to that, and I don't think that on this program we have time to go into it. So let nobody fool us by trying to say that the change over from the unitary state to a federation in 1972 was the people's choice, as if the people really had a choice. No. By 1972, our own political parties had been dismantled, partly with the complicity of our political leaders. I have never exculpated Cameroonian politicians of the day from what happened to us. Okay, the UC, rather the CNU that was formed with the complicity of our own people who agreed that their political parties, KNDP, CPNC, and all of that should dissolve and join Mr. Hijo's party to form one political party for the country. That was wrong. So if you like, they contributed to a breach of the second obligation that I was referring to. So their complicity in that breach does not make the breach right. It was a violation of an obligation that was fundamental to those two territories coming together, you know? So I would therefore say that the time has come for us to repair that breach. Okay?
Oh, yeah, all right. You just said the time has come to repair that breach, and that is why the coalition of Cameroon federalist groups and activists has been formed. Now, concretely, why do you think that federalism is an ideal form of government now for Cameroon, particularly in relation to solving the crisis in the northwest and southwest regions?
Oh, for a variety of reasons. And I will remind your viewers that the CCFGA, the coalition, issued a declaration on the 20th of November 2021. I recommend this declaration to all your viewers. You know, they should read it. There they will discover more than 10 reasons why federalism is ideal for Cameroon. Again, we may not have enough time for me to go through all of them here now.
Well, maybe briefly, you may cite some briefly.
But allow me to mention, you know, just a few. First, federalism enables us to keep our country one, while at the same time ensuring that no part of this country dominates or assimilates another. In other words, it offers the best conditions for managing our two colonial heritages fairly, equitably, and harmoniously. That's important. Second, federalism, as we propose it, is based on the judicious sharing of both power and resources between the local, state, and federal levels of government, as will be written into the Constitution, not left to the discretion of one man to determine how power and resources are allocated between the regions. This will have to be written into the Constitution, the sharing of power and resources at the three levels of government. And this has the potential of protecting not only the nation, but also its citizens from arbitrary rule by one man, or if you like, who knows tomorrow, by one woman, you know? So federalism, because it involves effective, not this cosmetic thing that we have now, but effective devolution of power, autonomy to the regions, you know, and it will assure the equitable development of all these regions, of every one of our 10 regions, or if we choose to increase the number tomorrow or to reduce it, whatever number of regions we have then. You know, federalism also has this advantage, you know, because it diffuses the exercise of political power to various autonomous levels, the local, the state, and the federal. Federalism has the potential to reduce political tensions in the country. A lot of all this covetousness of power is because everything is concentrated. Everybody wants to be part of that concentrated level. But once you devolve power and resources effectively to the states and the local levels, there would be less political tension in the country, and therefore there will be the playing field for free and fair elections, as well as the peaceful transfer of power following each election in accordance with the sovereign will of the people, And if I may continue, a major advantage of federalism is that by doing all the things that I just mentioned above, it creates the conditions for true national unity and cohesion. All those tensions are reduced. People have a sense of fair play. They feel that they belong. All this will contribute to creating a true, the true national unity and cohesion in our country. And it will give you and me, as citizens of the country, a genuine feeling of patriotism. Not patriotism that is forced, that is, patriotism cannot be decreed. Citizens have to feel a sense of love, of belonging to their country. That's what patriotism is about. But for that to happen, they must also be encouraged by the way they are managed to do so. And federalism, as we've just indicated, brings all of that.
But some critics may argue that our next door neighbor to Nigeria still has more problems. Even though it's a federal state, we still have social tensions over there in Nigeria, many hotspots, despite the fact that Nigeria is a federal country. What guarantees that the case of Cameroon could be different?
If I may react to that, I mean, no society, we're not saying that there is any form of government in the world that removes all problems in society. I mean, politics is a matter of daily, continuous working out of mechanisms by which a society is governed in the public domain. Okay? If you're talking about Nigeria and other federations, but Nigeria in particular, what you have to ask yourself, Mr. NSOESIE, is how would things have been in Nigeria if they did not continue to federalize? Okay? Remember that they started with just 3 regions in their federation. And they went on to become 9, then 12, and today there are, I think, about 36.
36 plus the Federal Capital Territory.
Exactly. So the problem of Nigerian society is not the form of the state. There are things like the temperament of the people can count. The sense that even in that in a federal arrangement, some people in some states may still try to act as if they were just autocrats. In other words, acting in their own federated state as if they were in a centralized unitary state. So there are internal determinants of the effectiveness of federalism. So otherwise, if you take, let us say, a bad example, I don't say necessarily that, I don't agree with you that Nigeria is a bad example of democracy, but I'm sure if you were to look around, you will see many good examples of democracy. I mean, of federalism. I repeat, I'm not saying that Nigeria, I don't necessarily agree with you that it's a bad federation, but even if it were, I'm sure that if you look around the world, you will see very many successful federal systems.
Yes, Doctor, since the question of federalism came up with the Anglophone crisis, there has been so many camps with so many proposals. Some are talking about a return to the 2-state federation. We know that is the proposal of Barrister Felix Agbobala, who began the consortium. We also have other actors advocating for a 4-state federation, while some believe that the current regions should be transformed into federated states plus maybe a federal capital territory. Now, for the Cameroon coalition of federalist groups and activists, what is the ideal form of federation in Cameroon?
Yeah, at the CCFGA, we are aware of this situation that you're describing, where there are various proposals, and that is normal because as far as we are concerned, the debate is still on. And we believe that this is a matter which, on which Cameroonians in general, and those in the Northwest and Southwest regions in particular, ought to have a frank, sincere, and comprehensive discussion, with a view to finding the most appropriate formula. Now, it all depends on what justification you want for a particular formula. So at this stage, at the CCFGA, we believe that it is not our place to try to dictate the form of the federation. There has to be a general discussion of this issue in the nation in the months ahead. However, let me say this. Any formula that is ultimately adopted has to respond to two major concerns. Any form of the federal state that is adopted has to respond to two major concerns, which are, in my view, first, how to protect each of our country's two colonial heritages that we brought into the union that we formed on the 1st of October 1961, while assuring that one of them does not, as is the tendency now, assimilate and swallow up the other. So the federal form of the states that we adopt eventually has to make sure that it addresses that concern. Stop one of our two colonial heritages from assimilating and swallowing the other. Now, the second is the need for the form of the state to respond to the aspirations of Cameroonians of all regions to full regional autonomy. That is a given. If you go around and you talk to people, they will tell you that they all aspire to govern themselves autonomously within their respective regions. People want to govern themselves. So the form of the federation has to address both of these concerns, and in order to define it, we need indeed to have a debate among Cameroonians when the time comes, as we continue to push towards the reestablishment of federalism in this country. So we at the CCFGA do not believe that it is our role to preempt such a debate by trying to dictate a particular form of the federation of the Cameroonian people. But we are aware of all this, of the discussion going on, and indeed that's what we encourage. The CCFGA is a platform. We encourage all federalists to come on that platform, and it is on that platform, that assignation, we will cool-headedly examine each of the proposals. What is the justification? What is the rationale? What is the advantage of this or that formula? And we'll come to a decision as long as, in the end, we have a federation. So I don't believe that we should try at this point to say, I propose this and it has to be that. I propose this and it has to be that. No. There will be time for discussion.
Okay, Dr. Munzu, you just mentioned moments ago that in Cameroon, every region is aspiring to have an autonomous system of governance. Now, what type of governance would you recommend within a federation? Like, for example, the election of officials, maybe in terms of budgeting, maybe also important aspects like security, public health, education. What do you foresee in Cameroon? Should Cameroon become a federation?
No, should Cameroon become a federation, by and large, it should be the distribution of power and of resources will follow about the same pattern as we have in most other federations around the world. Namely, once you have determined that there are going to be these three layers of government, the local, the state or regional, or call it what you will, and capping all of that, the federal, then you have to determine, first of all, what are the areas of competence that are best left to the federal level. For example, when it comes to conducting the foreign policy of our country, you will not expect the state and local governments to be concerned with that. Insofar as we need only one army in our country, you will not expect the state and local government levels to be concerned with that, military matters. Insofar as our entire nation needs to have only one currency, you wouldn't expect the local government and the state levels to be primarily concerned with the formulation of monetary policy and so on and so forth. So there are domains where, by their very nature, need to be managed at national level, therefore at the federal level. But there are many others which, even when the broad guidelines, the broad policy framework is defined at national level, the actual implementation from day to day, entailing the commitment of resources to enable that implementation to be done, can best take place at state or local level. For example, even in the area of health, once the national health policy has been defined, it is best implemented at state level, at local level, where a health board of a particular state holds the medical personnel of that state responsible for delivering quality services to the people. The same thing as the delivery of things like water, electricity. There is no reason for the delivery of such services to be handled at national or federal level. The general energy policy has to be determined, yes, by the national legislature and executive. The overall education policy, yes. But when it comes to implementation, that should be devolved to state and local levels. But all this will be the object of a constitutional conference, because it will entail modifying our constitution. It will be the object of a constitutional conference at which the levels of authority are defined, the attributes, the responsibilities at each level are clearly indicated, and more importantly, the resources necessary for those responsibilities to be discharged are made available in accordance with a formula agreed in advance and enshrined in the Constitution. Again, the allocation of resources will not be a matter of the magnanimity of the head of state. He has given this amount of money. No. States and local governments should know well in advance what monies are available to them in order to plan the effective delivery of services to the citizens.
Okay, Dr. Munzu, the Cameroon Coalition for Federalist Groups and Activists is coming at a time when separatists have been highly opposed to that initiative. We have seen some reactions online, and you have always maintained, even before the crisis took the armed conflict dimension, that an independent southern Cameroon, which the separatists are fighting for, can never be attained through war. Can you highlight more on that? Why do you think so?
Oh, well, I mean, you know, I am not the only one who has been saying so. Many people, both inside Cameroon and out of Cameroon, have said that there can be no military solution to the present conflict, or for that matter, to the Anglophone problem in general. But that applies to both parties. You know, to the assimilationist regime in Yaoundé. I mean, that regime cannot keep Anglophones in this country, you know, if you like, within this country by force of arms. The unity of our country does not depend upon the use of military force. So there is no military solution, even to keeping Cameroon united. And on the other hand, when I say that in my fervent belief, separatists cannot deliver independence by war, I look at many factors, some of which you must have observed too. You know, when you look at it analytically, it is clear that at this point, or for that matter, at any point since they started this misadventure, they don't show evidence of having the organizational, logistic, or military capabilities to defeat the Cameroonian military and beat them to the point where the Cameroon government goes suing for peace and sitting with separatists at the negotiating table and agreeing to the breakup of Cameroon. I don't see that happening. See how much division and squabbling there is among separatists over power and money, both among their political leaders in the diaspora and among the forces on the ground, where every element, it would appear, is a general. You know, that's not the makeup and posture of people who are capable of winning a war of independence against the armed forces of an organized state. You know, where do you see them carrying out the county by county, block by block, rooftop by rooftop fighting strategy that they bragged about so much at the beginning of the war? No, I believe that they are in there, and I think most people can see that even more clearly now than at the beginning when we were saying these things. They are in there just for the money that they are making from the situation now, and they cannot deliver independence by war. They can't. And if the only way for them to prove me wrong is to do it, I hope I live long enough to see that they cannot do it. But as a matter of analysis and observation and so on, it's clear that in spite of all the gesticulation, they can't do it. You know, it's not by, I mean, the new toy they have found recently is the so-called improvised explosive device, the IED. All right, I mean, I worked in in my UN career, I worked in many war conflict areas where serious, if you like, revolutionary movements were waging real war against state forces and so on. But you don't win a war by exploding the occasional IED in markets, near churches, and so on, every now and again to frighten people or to kill a fit full of soldiers. You know, what does it mean for the Cameroon army for you to explode one IED and which kills 3 or 4 or 5 soldiers, and you go bragging that you're winning? Do you win a war of liberation against an organized state by killing 4 soldiers here, 10 soldiers there? You know, we deplore the killing of anyone, including soldiers, and for that matter, including these young people who have been taken into this adventure that they are going into, some of them losing their lives for something they don't even understand, you know? But it takes more than that to beat an army to the point where the government of the country that has that army, in the case of the government of Cameroon, comes and says, "Oh, please, we are suing for peace because you've beaten us so thoroughly that we are finished. Come to the negotiation table, and particularly come so that we discuss how we separate our country. You leave and become independent." No, Mr. NSOESIE, let's not fool our people. It is not these fellows who are making all this noise, calling themselves this army and that army, who are going to win that battle. So I therefore remain convinced, like many other people, by the way, that independence by war will not come, and that therefore there is no military solution to this conflict, to this problem, neither from the part of the government nor from the part of the separatists. That's why we must do everything necessary for us to adopt the negotiation, the dialogue approach, which gets us around the table, where we seriously examine the serious problems confronting our country, and find adequate solutions to them.
Now, you just spoke about dialogue, and that leads me to bring in this question. We are talking about here about 2 parties who are already bent on their positions. The government of Cameroon has made it clear that the form of the state is not negotiable. It continues with the unitary, decentralized system of governance, and the separatists who say they are trying to restore the independence of the Northwest and Southwest regions, formerly the British Southern Cameroons. Now, on the dialogue table, do you think that dialogue is necessary? You attended the major national dialogue, and the separatist faction was not there. For a while now, we have been hearing reports that there were some backroom meetings between some members of government and some separatist leaders, those who have been locked up in Yaoundé. Do you really believe, like some of those who are advocating, that the government and the separatists need to dialogue and perhaps give concessions for each other? Already the government says that it has already given those concessions already.
Well, Peter, everywhere in the world and in every conflict situation, I can tell you there isn't one that ends without dialogue and negotiation. The combatants have to go to the negotiation table, and the earlier they do it, the better, because then they reduce the cost in human suffering, in loss of property, and in other forms of deprivation that war brings upon civilian population, innocent civilians. So there is no doubt in my mind that in this conflict, in spite of the resistance of the government on one side and the separatists on the other to engage meaningful dialogue, they are going to end up at a dialogue and negotiation table, because that's how all wars end. The question is whether they think enough about the people of Cameroon to say, let's do this now and limit the fallout of this conflict on the population. Or let's subject this population to another, to several more years. Already we're into the 5th or 6th year And it is for those of us who have been advocating dialogue and peace right from the beginning, negotiation right from the beginning, say that there was no need for this war to even start. A bit of good faith would have been sufficient to address the root causes of this conflict by dialogue and negotiation. And there is still time for that to happen and for us to put an end to additional years of the consequences of this war. Here we are in March. Very soon it will be the end of another academic year, I think in June. The children will go home, for those of them who even went to school, but otherwise for most of them, they will remain home waiting for September to discover that they are about to lose, or that they've lost another year of school. Why do we need to inflict that on the population only to end up after 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, 10 years of loss of school by a whole generation of children, to then come and say, we sit down and talk? There is going to be dialogue. And we've been advocating that right from the beginning for the good reasons that I've just indicated. Now, it's clear that for the time being, both the government and the separatists, unfortunately, are living the illusion that the problem can be solved by military means. But as we said earlier, there is no military solution to the conflict, the armed conflict in the north and southwest regions, and more especially to the Anglophone problem, which is rooted in this phenomenon of domination, marginalization, and assimilation, which Anglophones have been subjected to for almost 60 years now, but which evidently they cannot accept forever. So it needs to be resolved through dialogue and negotiation.
Okay. During the major national dialogue, you chaired the Committee for Reconstruction and Development. And of course, the dialogue ended with a special status for the Northwest and Southwest regions. You have been one of those who have come up, even before the election of regional councillors, that the special status is not ideal for Cameroon. And recently, you published a book known as Special Status, No Special Status. Why do you think that the special status is not ideal for the Northwest and Southwest regions of the country?
In all good faith, I collaborated in many different respects with regard to the major national dialogue. And when, after the proposals that were made by some participants that we return to the federal state of form of government as a way of solving the Anglophone problem was rejected, it was suggested from the floor that, well, why don't we try this? The Constitution of Cameroon says that special status can be granted to certain regions based on their specificities. So why don't we resort to that article of the Constitution? Hence, the proposal that we should have special status for the Northwest and Southwest regions. It wasn't the best solution. It wasn't the ideal solution, but at least it had the seeds of the beginning of a search for a genuine solution to the Anglophone problem. And so we all said, yeah, okay, special status. But you know what? The elements of special status were not defined by the major national dialogue. The major national dialogue simply suggested the idea, or made the recommendation, that special status should be granted to these two regions. And that recommendation was taken along with other recommendations to the head of state, who had instructed that the major national dialogue be organized. And so our expectation was that the government having accepted that recommendation, will make a serious effort of giving proper content, significant content, to the special status of Northwest and Southwest regions. But what happened? When the law of 24th of December 2019 on decentralization came out, remember, it was a law on decentralization. And then, in the light of the recommendation from the Major National Dialogue, those who drafted that law decided to insert some provisions in the law, which they entitled Special Status of Northwest and Southwest Regions. Now, when you take the provisions of that part of the law and you say, what is really in there? That shows that we've been given special status. I'm afraid, I'm saying this not just to cause trouble, but you know, amongst other things, I mean, some of us are intellectuals. What's the point being an intellectual if you cannot analyze? And what's the point analyzing if you cannot say what you found by your analysis? Other people may disagree with you, but you say what your analysis leads you to. And my reading and analysis of those provisions on special status leads to the conclusion that in reality there is no special status. Number one, do you know that all the 69 councils in the Northwest and Southwest, from the city councils, the 3 city councils of Limbe, Kumba, and Bamenda, the 9 subdivisional councils in each, I mean, in those 3 cities, each of them has 3. Limbe 1, Limbe 2, Limbe 3, Bamenda 1, Bamenda 2, Bamenda 3, Kumba 1, Kumba 2, Kumba 3. Those 9, plus all the councils out of Bamenda in the Northwest, all, plus all the councils out of Kumba and Limbe in the Southwest, all. Peter, this gives you a total of 69 councils. Those 69 councils, none of them is affected by the provisions of the law that are devoted to special status. They come under the same governance, the same provisions of the law that apply to the councils in the 8 Francophone regions. So when you take away those 69 councils, which are responsible for effective implementation of services to people, what do you have left? So that's the first observation. They can't tell us that we have special status when all our 69 councils at sub-regional level are governed by exactly the same provisions of the law as those in the 8 Francophone regions. So the so-called special status concerns only the 2 regional councils, the one in Bamenda for the Northwest and the one in Boya for the Southwest. And yet when you go even there, you ask yourself, where is the special status here? They say they have additional powers. And you try to look, what are the additional powers which they've been given? Read my book. I'm not just speaking in the air. That's what made me write that book, because the public needs to know. The government, if they are in good faith, ought to know that there is no way in which something so vacuous, something so empty, can serve as a solution to the major problem that we have today. They may pretend that it works. You've mentioned that people are producing first-year. Of course. I mean, once you elect a number of people, if they are content just to be carrying the titles enjoying the perks that come with it, a salary at the end of the month, and so on. So the institutions are there. But how are they delivering? How are they delivering?
Okay.
You know, so once again, you mentioned the book. So I would simply recommend to Cameroonians, and by the way, the book is in English and French, Cameroonians, Anglophones and Francophones, take the book, read it, and you will see for yourself. So I repeat, because there's a tendency in Cameroon that once you speak up, you are branded this and branded that. I don't give a damn at this stage at this stage of my life and at this age. I am out here to make a contribution to the full understanding of the problems of my country, so that with that understanding, we can find adequate solutions. If they're not found in my lifetime, they'll be found by generations after me. But it is my responsibility in terms of service to my nation to point out what is wrong, what is inadequate, so that those who have the responsibility for governing us can do better, can improve. That's what suggestions are for.
All right.
But believe me, and I'll end there, believe me, let no one fool us. There is no special status for the Northwest and Southwest. They tell you, oh, because we have a so-called, our own regional assembly is divided into two, House of Divisional Representatives and House of Chiefs. Because you have House of Chiefs, therefore you are special. Nonsense.
Okay.
Do you know that dividing them like that, and I do, and again, I argue that in the book, and illustrate that in the book, do you know that dividing them like that into House of Divisional Representatives and House of Chiefs, 70 and 20, makes them work less efficiently than their counterparts in the Francophone regions, who were all 90, that includes their own 20 traditional rulers as well. But all 90 sit together. The debate issue, everybody's listening to everybody's argument. That is more efficient than saying that 70 non-chiefs sit together while the chiefs are waiting to receive what they've discussed. And then the chiefs, when the thing comes, the chiefs also take their turn. When did they sit to hear the arguments that were advanced in the House of Divisional Representatives for them to examine the same thing? Where?
All right.
And remember that they are sitting on the same days. When the session is convened, it is convened. The House of Divisional Representatives is meeting, and the House of Chiefs are meeting the same week. So when all that time has been spent, part of that 7 or maximum 8 days has been spent in the House of Divisional Representatives looking at an issue. During this time, the House of Chiefs is idling by, and then the thing is sent to them. You see how inefficient it gets. While their counterparts in French-speaking Cameroon are sitting together, 90 of them, examining everything at the same time, and that is more efficient. So to give us a formula which increases inefficiencies, but because you want to call it the House of Chiefs and make us believe that our former House of Chiefs that we had in the days of West Cameroon has been restored, I mean, that's trying to fool people, and some of us are here to point that out.
Okay, Dr. Simon Munzu, thank you very much for being with us. Unfortunately, time is against us. We'll still find our time to discuss different aspects of this particular issue as we go in depth on them. Thank you very much for being with us.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for having me, and my congratulations to Dash Media. You guys are doing a wonderful job, and let's keep in touch. And you certainly will be hearing more and more from the coalition of Cameroon Federalists groups and activists. Thank you.
All right, and to you, televiewers, that was Dr. Simon Munzu, the chair of the working group of the Coalition of Cameroon Federalist Groups and Activists. He was our guest today on In Depth. Until next time, bye-bye.